Hey, DD fam. So we're coming at you with some late breaking news. You heard it here first. And this episode's really going to take a deep dive into our Diversify Dietetics Internship Program. The program launched back in 2023. I think I have that year right. And this will be the final cohort of it. So our Dietetic Internship Program is going to be closing down after this cohort graduates in the spring. Why? You may be asking. What happened? What is it? If you've never heard of this Dietetic Internship Program before, all of those questions will get answered today. So I'm excited to be talking with our program coordinator, Deja Ivy, and the program director, my co-founder, Tamara Melton, to hear just the whole evolution of it. So it's definitely bittersweet, but at the end, you'll get to hear about what's coming next. Hint, hint, scholarships are back. More to come on that if you're a student or dietetic intern looking for some financial support. We still want to be able to support folks to continue this journey to becoming professionals, because if you've heard nothing else from us, it's that we are all needed in this field, and some other new programs. If you want to support the final cohort of the Diversify Dietetics Internship Program, we still need it. Financial support of it really goes a long way to support that program as well as all of our programs, and you can donate at diversifydietetics.org/donate. It'll be in the show notes as well. I'm excited for you to hear about this journey because it's been a labor of love from Tamara specifically and Deja as well. So hope you enjoy. Welcome to Feed Me the Facts, the podcast dedicated to representation and inspiration for students and professionals of color pursuing careers in nutrition and dietetics. I'm Deanna Lewis, registered dietitian and co-founder of Diversify Dietetics. Every episode will bring you expert insights, the latest trends, and personal stories that inspire. Whether you're new to the field or a seasoned pro, this is your space to learn, grow, and connect. Welcome back to Feed Me the Facts. Deanna here, and I'm joined by some familiar faces in the DD world. Tamara Melton, who is the executive director and co-founder of DD. She's also the director of our Diversify Dietetics Internship Program, as well as Deja Ivy, program coordinator for our Diversify Dietetics Internship Program. And I'm excited to be talking to them today about the internship and just where things are at. So before we get started, Tamara, I'm wondering if you can tell the backstory, because the internship was really your baby that you put together miraculously in such a short time frame. I know watching you go through that process was really arduous and rewarding. And yeah, so tell us a little bit about how it became the internship program.
Yeah, when you and I met in 2018, I think we both had babies that we wanted and became Diversify Dietetics. And I was definitely wanting to create a dietetic internship program because I wanted us to have a model program for how to attract, recruit, retain, educate, support, and really promote into the profession students of color. That's my why for DD, period. Like if anybody has heard the reason why, I came from academia. I was working at a university. Was working in health informatics, but wanted to be able to replicate what I did in health informatics in the nutrition world. In 2020, we had the opportunity to reach out for accreditation for our own dietetic internship program. It was to be a freestanding program, and our goal was to be able to leverage, and we did this, we had to leverage our 501c3 status to receive donations to support our interns so that they didn't have to pay tuition and hopefully other expenses too, because we know that's the number one barrier for students is paying for their internship. And so in 2020, I did go through, and I do tell people this is the hardest thing I have done in my professional career, hands down, was write a self-study. That was very difficult. It's really hard, but I learned a lot in that process. And I had quite a few people who were helping me, including my mentor and my former program director, who was the chair of Ascend, which is the accreditation council on nutrition education. I'm probably not getting that directly, but it's the accrediting council over all the accredited programs in the United States in dietetics. And so she was really helpful. And there were other people who helped as well. I remember it was definitely during the middle of COVID over winter break, probably the first all-nighter I've ever pulled hands down, getting that done and getting the application and self-study in. And so that went in, and then we had a site visit here in Atlanta, and we were approved for our program. We took our first cohort of dietetic interns, with 9 interns in the fall of 2023. I think. Yeah. So we had our first cohort and we were supported, not completely 100%. We did take some funding from other parts of DD that we had, just general funding to make sure our interns did not pay any tuition to us. We also covered other expenses, like we're able to cover for them to come to Atlanta to have a in-person orientation. So completely cover those costs, except for their travel. They covered that just at least to get here. Would take care of things like their background checks and CPR certification. So that was our first year in our first cohort that graduated in the summer of 2024.
Yeah. And I remember in 19, when we got together for our first board retreat in Atlanta, writing that as something we wanted to do in 5 years. We would love to have a dietetic internship, and it happened so much faster. One of our taglines is shaking up the status quo, and we wanted to do things differently where there wasn't that financial barrier, where we made sure that students had preceptors that understood, as folks of color, different barriers they may face going into this predominantly white field. And so to see that sticky note on a wall turn into this whole program that you brought to life was really amazing. And not to bury the lead, but the reason that we're talking today is because you've made the decision to close the program. And so that, I think, context of where things went and how arduous it was a good grounding point. And I'm so curious at all the lessons you all have learned, because it was not an easy decision, I imagine, to decide that like it's time for this program to come to a close as the Dietetic Internship Program.
No, it
So,
wasn't. Yeah.
yeah, no, go ahead.
Now we're in timeline of, so we go back to now it's spring, summer of 2024. And a lot of things are going on around the world around the world, but also in the United States in particular around DEI focused programming. And that was when, if people remember, in 2023 is when the Supreme Court of the United States made a decision to pull back affirmative action. And so we were talking about this earlier. DD, we've been around since 2018. So we've been around since, I think, pre anybody caring about DEI, really. And so now we're in that space of like post, which we knew would happen. Like we always planned for that, I think. But we saw that reflected in decisions, just priorities where funders wanted to fund. And they weren't funding the internship program, the scholarship program, and other programs in the same way either. But particularly the scholarship program, which is a very expensive program to run. It was easily more than half our budget at DD. Because it's a direct service program, it's something that our team is the one who's actually providing the service to the interns. So in that summer of 2024, spring and summer, we're looking like, okay, we as an organization were also looking at our funding and saying, this may not be sustainable. It's really important to remember that we wanted to not pass off the cost to interns. As a freestanding dietetic internship, we are not part of an educational institution. So that meant that if we did not cover their tuition or provide scholarships, they would have to find funding on their own or get private loans. They couldn't get federal student loans for this. And so for them to not be able to have that is not something that we wanted to pass on to them.
And Deja, you came in very much early days, originally doing a lot of research around Black student enrollment. So I'm wondering if you can just talk about your journey with DD, where you came in, and then becoming the coordinator and the role you played within the internship.
Sure. I'll go back a little bit further to the first time I heard about the idea of DD having an internship. Tamara came to a skills session while I was an intern and a graduate student at Georgia State University and said that she wanted to create and provide a free internship to interns of color to help bring down the barrier of financial costs. And I remember being so inspired because I was someone who got, quote unquote, stuck in the pipeline, waiting years to save up to try to do my internship, and ended up going back and doing my master's so that I could get that federal funding to become a dietitian. That was a moment that I'll never forget. After becoming a dietitian, I heard about the role of a leadership scholar to research the pipeline of Black students and interns to understand why there's such a huge difference in percentages between people who are dietitians of color versus people who are not dietitians of color, specifically focusing on people who are of African American or Black background. And so I started off researching that. And then while I was doing that work, the opportunity for the internship coordinator came available. I think Tamara would describe it as failed recruitment. So you guys were trying to hire someone, but it just wasn't working out. I raised my hand because it was something I was so passionate about and had that lived experience to relate to.
I'm curious, because you did all that research around the Black student enrollment and then got to be a part of a program that was enrolling people of color. Were there lessons that you learned in that first year that you saw in a different way once you started getting in as the coordinator and working day to day in the internship?
Absolutely. I think that could be a separate podcast. In my research, I did a lot of focus group work with HBCU educators and leaders of internships. One of the main issues that students and interns are reporting as far as wanting to become a dietitian was the support network, not feeling like they had someone in their corner to really help them out. And then also issues within their rotations as far as not working with preceptors who were culturally accepting or culturally humble. So being on the internship side and now being able to work with some of the preceptors, a lot of those issues came to light. It was a huge learning experience.
So I'm curious about the changing landscape you talked about from the DEI perspective and the SCOTUS decision. What about from the profession? What sort of things were changing in our field that made you think, should we reevaluate continuing this program moving forward?
So in education during COVID, so those years post, like toward the middle of the end of the pandemic, the enrollment of higher ed just declined. And this was everywhere. So it didn't matter what program it was or anything. You could have been doing architecture degree. It didn't matter. But in nutrition in particular, it declined about 50%. And this is within the span of 2 years. And that's particularly for people going into dietetic internship programs. So obviously, this is not just students of color. This was everyone. There was definitely a shift. And again, it's another podcast episode, maybe for another organization to look at, because it's looking at people making the decision, do they want to come into this profession or not? And so we saw what used to be, what I like to call like a seller's market, where the programs were able to be a little bit more selective and be picky about who they accepted. And then also, they really didn't worry about the recruitment of maybe students they wouldn't go after, try to make efforts to recruit, shifted very quickly amongst dietetic internship programs. We did not see that at DD, but we were also offering a full scholarship. And then we also, I think, prioritized supporting students of color. So we didn't see that. We saw it amongst our colleagues and we saw that happening. So you saw this great shift in this drop. And so the work that Deja was doing, looking at Black students, the reason why we hired her on the year before she transitioned in the coordinator role, was because we had seen such a big drop in Black students in particular. And when this bigger drop happened, and this is between like 2021 to 2022, and this is data from Ascend. This BD data is from the accrediting agency. We saw that drop happen. Black students really plummeted. Like, it just really dropped at that point in time. We had seen relative rises in other groups of students, Hispanic, Latino students, Asian students. We've seen numbers come up, but with Black students, we really saw it decline. And then students just all over just decline overall. And so we saw in the profession, just recruitment in general, or I should say enrollment, just go down, which meant that there were going to be, and we're seeing it now here at the time of this recording in 2025, a shortage of dietitians coming out on the other side. And so that's what we have seen in the profession just as a whole, is that there are now programs that are also deciding, are they able to keep their doors open? Because if they don't have students, there's not revenue to come in for tuition. And I do want to add the little asterisk that sometimes people are put out that they're charged to, or they have to pay money to be trained. But unless somebody covers a cost, people who are actually running your program can't pay their light bills either, which we really feel at DD. So that's just the way that, at least in America, education, we pay for it at that higher ed level. But even with that, people were deciding to do this. That was also the factor we looked at in the summer of 2024, looking into the fall. The profession as a whole, like the numbers just declining, even though our particular internship program was still we had full seats with our interns.
Yeah, we did a stat post in November or December where you can see some of these numbers specifically, and we can link to it. Tamara's our go-to data person. If we have any questions about data, it's always, let's ask Tamara, because she has the details. She knows where to get it. She knows the source. But you had sent the number, because it's like, the percentage sounds bad as it is. 25% decrease in program enrollment for Black students. That sounds bad. 50% dietetic internship applicants overall decrease. Sounds awful as well. But when you saw the number of less than 900 Black students are in accredited programs, that was mind-blowing to see just how small that number really is and how it continued to just has been going down, which is, again, I think double down on the need for Diversify Dietetics as an organization to still have this mission to increase diversity. Just to see the state of where things were going was really heartbreaking for the field.
Yeah, I've used that number with people. I didn't even notice it until there was a project somebody else on the team was working on. You guys were like, hey, tomorrow, where do you get this? And I pulled it. The numbers had been updated. And that number of less than 900 is not in dietetic internships. It's across all the programs. So
Oh my gosh.
that's the DPD programs, undergrad, any accredited program. So there's even less Black students at that last step that we know we have to go through to be able to sit for the RD exam.
Yeah. Ugh, that's so wild. I remember applying for dietetic internships, right? It was this like super hyper competitive. The match rate was like 50%, but I like that you talked about it as a buyer seller's market because it completely fit where students that were applying could be like, all of these programs have open spaces. Let me go and find which one I'm most interested in to try to get into. You said that DD didn't have that experience. So can you talk about what did that look like then? It just maintained the same number of applicants year over year?
Our first cohort, the first year, which was 23-24, we had about 30 applicants we ended up taking 9. And then the next year, the numbers were about the same. In the spring of 2024, when Match happened, we accepted our class in January. We knew our next class was coming in very strong, very competitive. And at the time of this recording, they're actually in their rotations right now. So that's our current cohort. 2 of the students were coming in with their PhDs completed. The rest of them already have their graduate degrees done. So we have a really strong cohort. Even the students we didn't accept were very strong as well. And what was interesting is we also were very aware of what was going on in the landscape of diversity in education, but we still saw students who really were interested in what is the vision of DD. They want to work in the communities they come from. That's what they want to do. This is their lived experience, and that's who they care about. And so we have a really great cohort that's currently running. Our first cohort was awesome too, a really great cohort. So we didn't see this decline, but I will say almost all of our interns, and Deja, you can let me know because I know you work with them very closely, still work. Like they might have had their tuition covered.
Yes, they definitely work.
So we still saw that even though we cover their tuition and many of their expenses, finances were still a barrier for them. We're a very flexible program. We give them credits for prior assessed learning, which means if they've already shown that they've achieved the mastery of some competencies, we give them that credit so that it actually lessens the time that they're in the program. We make it so that they're able to work if they need to take some time off or have a shortened schedule. Deja works really closely with them. This was all data points telling us something's going on here. If we're doing what we can to create an environment within the system as it exists right now, that's important. Within the system that we have to work under because we're going to be accredited underneath this system. Our interns are still working. They're still having to find jobs on top of what they're doing here, even though we're finding a way to give them a full tuition scholarship.
So it's still not enough. There still needs to be more both financial support and support in all the other ways that you mentioned, Deja. I'm curious because you had to make a decision. Like you got to this point where they were like, do you want to become fully accredited and keep running this program? I'm not sure how long you would have to run it once you said yes to accreditation. What was it like getting that email or letter formally? And what were the conversations that you and Deja had to weigh the pros and cons of continue or not? Because there was a lot of interest. You were doing things in ways that were really trying to support the communities. I'm curious of what it looked like.
Yes. So Deja and I have weekly meetings. We're talking about the things that are going on. Deja's also helping because in the background, we're constantly fundraising. Like constantly going out to Deanna, you're a big part of that as well, writing grants and talking to potential donors and asking them to direct their funds to our program. And it's taking a lot of efforts to fundraise for a program that supports really about 10 students. And so I remember getting, as a program director, the email asking, hey, it's time for you to go for full accreditation. So the way that the process works when you start a new program is you are granted what's called conditional accreditation. Your interns or your students that graduate from your program are eligible to sit for the credentialing exam to become dietitians. But you're at some point, and it comes very quickly, as I saw, going to have to go through a full process of writing yet another self-study. But now it's even more arduous because now there's data that didn't exist before that you now have to include. And then you have to do what's called a site visit a few months later. It would have taken the year that we're in right now, 2025, this whole year to go through that process again. There's thousands of dollars that go into it because we pay the accrediting agency to be able to run this program and for people to come and do a site visit and everything. And our time, obviously, as staff. This is on top of running the program itself. So the program still needs to keep running and you're doing all this work too. I saw that email come in and I was like, it's conditional on both sides. It's not just a one side conditional thing. And I went to Deja first and I just floated the idea to her. Hey, we might need to think about what we're going to do. And I really was actually first, the executive director and me and program director and me was wondering how Deja felt because she did decide to raise her hand and apply for this position. And so that was actually my first concern was how does she feel? Because this is also something that she was a part of and where we're at. So I don't know if you want to share, Deja, how you felt when I first.
Yeah. I think you did a great job of presenting it to me because you actually said that maybe we should ramp it down, accept less students or less interns, which at the time sounded really great because behind the scenes, being able to offer a distance program, which means potentially 10 to 12 different cities every single cycle, we have to go out and find those placements. And so at that time, I started to look for placements in the 8 different cities I think we're in this year. And it was difficult. There's many reasons behind that. One of them being that DD is a nonprofit, and some hospitals only want to work with institutions, academic institutions, schools, or will only accept actively enrolled students, which all of our interns had graduate degrees already. So there are a myriad of reasons as to why it was taking so much time. But the time portion was making me think, okay, maybe we do need to scale back if it's just Tamara and I. People are limited resources too. I say it all the time. Once it transitioned from being let's scale back to possibly let's sunset the program, that hit differently. Of course, you feel sad. You think of all the people, all the interns you could potentially help, and you don't want that opportunity to go away. But at the same time, we're dealing in realities and the financing started to dry up. There's only so much time. So you start to become a little bit more open-minded about what else we could do to better serve this mission. So that's how I felt.
I remember when you all brought it to our bigger team meeting and had all those options on the table. We keep doing it and try to figure out how to make it work. We scale it back, but there's very similar costs. It's not like we're saving any money by scaling back the number of interns because the amount of resources that go into it and the amount of time is still there, or we sunset it. And it was a really hard meeting because everyone was like trying to figure out a way to make it work. But we had just come off of our end of our fiscal year and we were looking at our budget and we were like, okay, y'all, just to be specific about how our numbers look, we ended the year in the red close to $100,000. And this program is our biggest expense. We could try to fundraise, but we were exhausting so many options. We were applying for grants. We were talking to foundations. We were talking to individuals. We were doing our campaign where we asked DD community members. And it just wasn't making ends meet. It was tough to face that and think, could we end up losing this organization by just trying to make, square peg fit in the round hole because we really want to continue to do this program. We know it's important. Or do we think about it differently?
Yeah, and I want to add to that the word exhausted, that we're human beings behind this organization. There's lots of moms,
Mhm.
girlfriends, wives, sisters, and daughters. We're a tiny little group here, and it's exhausting. And I know I'll speak personally that I think probably some of my most stressful years were trying to figure out how to fundraise for the program itself. Because it's a big responsibility to know that you're running a program that is essentially defining the last step to someone's many years of hard work that they've culminated for. And you want to make sure, like Deja was saying, it's a high quality program. Are we getting them into high quality placements? What's really important to Diversify Dietetics, are they being treated well? There's so much that goes into it. And I know part of my decision in looking at it was, and I tell people this, that what we preach to the DD community of rest and everything, we're part of the DD community too. So you all know I say this to you, we're not going to kill ourselves for the sake of the DD community. I personally, as a leader, will not let that happen to the group of women at this point who are working in this organization. And so part of it was that as well, was looking like, I said to Deja, I said, I know what it felt like to write a self-study. When doing that, it's really hard. And we don't have the infrastructure of an academic institution, which I didn't take into account. I was coming from a university that had all the structure within it, and we didn't have that for people to be just doing a lot of things that I didn't have to do. And as a full-time professor, we still want to feel some joy in this, and we want to have some energy to help. We love our 10 interns, but there's a lot of other people out there in the DD community that wanted to support. The human capital here was also running very threadbare thin.
Yeah, because I don't know if folks know, we have a very small team and everybody does other things. Everybody does their own dietetic practice, whether that's in clinical or renal or public health or GI. We all keep our practice hats on too, both for maintaining that practice, but also for financial stability and needing that to be able to make a living. And if anyone thinks about starting a nonprofit, a lot of it is fundraising and bringing in money. Tamara and I talk all the time about the dreams we have about money and needing to fundraise just to ensure sustainability. So it was like not just the financial piece, but it wasn't humanly sustainable from the burnout perspective and being able to continue to have a job that sustains you and fills you up in the way that DD has previously. And then looking at the landscape and seeing there may not necessarily be as big of a need for more internship programs right now because there are a lot of programs and ways for dietetic interns who are applying to find a program because of that buyer-seller's flip with the declining enrollment in programs. You mentioned the impact piece because with the internship, you all were having 9, 10 folks at a time. What could it look like on the other end of closing the programs? What are you thinking about if when this program closes officially? What are ways you all are excited about having an impact in ways?
Yes. So to free up our time from the program, I hope nobody listens to this. Oh my God, it's the most depressing DD episode ever. Please know there was a lot of joy and jubilation when we made the decision. We were like, yes, there was such a weight that was lifted because what it gave us is a space to be able to say, okay, we're going to take care of our 10 that we have here. We also have our other 8 who graduated. So we've got them as alum. It will forever be special. 18 people who came out of this program. But now that frees up our space and time to work on other things, expanding the programming for all the other students who are in these programs that we can then create time and space for programming for them. We have, and this might be out by the time this episode comes out, but we definitely can announce it. It just happened serendipitously that a donor came and asked us, hey, we have $150,000. Can you give out scholarships with that? So we're revamping and opening up our scholarship program externally, which means that we're going to be supporting students who are not going to meet the Diversify Dietetics Internship Programs, but going to other institutions. So now we're going to have the capacity to be able to manage that program, get that back up and running. If we had funds that come in, we can support students who are going to other dietetic internship programs. Deja, I don't know if there's anything else you want to.
I think having the opportunity to be a part of this internship, even though it's so amazing, and I'm so proud of our, as Tamara said, soon to be 18 graduates, 4 have already become dietitians. We're so proud of that work. It did make me think there should be more of a systemic impact. Although we love our 18, it's sad hearing the numbers, especially as it relates to Black dietitians and interns. They're just way too low. I'm looking forward to being able to make more of a bigger impact in a different way. And Tamara is already talking about some of the things that we're going to be able to do. So,
Yeah. And from the grant writing perspective, so many times we would write grants to try to retrofit it into the programs that we were already doing, including the internship. Okay, let's try to find something that can fund the internship. Now it frees up the space for us to see a grant opportunity and say, okay, what are some new programming? So one of the things we're thinking about right now is around developing more tools and resources for people that are providing nutrition counseling in community settings. Do they have the tools, education that they need to be able to do that? It has, yeah, there's definitely joy in the sunsetting. To not make this such a sad podcast, I'm wondering if there's a favorite time that you all have in the 2 cohorts that you remember that you're like, oh, that was really fun.
I hands down know I'm an educator. I love working with students. And I've been really fortunate to work with them for almost 20 years now, which is crazy. So I love when they transition to becoming colleagues because they do, and seeing them go into their first roles and everything. We have a Slack channel. We still have our first cohort Slack channel, and then we have our second cohort. So our first cohort Slack channel, every now and then we'll get these messages like, hey, I passed the exam, but then it's like also, hey, I got this new job. Then getting on a phone with them. It's not one moment, but whenever I get to talk to them, because I can be pretty relaxed with my interns, but I can be more formally relaxed once they become a colleague. Just hearing from them what they're doing. One of our interns just got her first like true like clinical dietitian, and she got her passed the RD exam and got this clinical job. And hearing her tell us about that and talking to some other folks, and one of our former interns now is working with us doing graphic design, and just seeing them flourish and become colleagues is always the best part of teaching and working with students.
What about you, Deja?
Tamara, my first cohort, we had nobody interested in clinical. And I worked at Emory Healthcare. I'm a dialysis dietitian now. So, of course, I have a heart for that. And by the end, someone who passed their exam decided she wanted to be a clinical dietitian. And that meant a lot. But anytime I see them growing in their confidence, them gaining more skills, even before they finish our internship and pass the exam, it's just great to see them doing what they came here to do, become a dietitian.
I love that. Yeah, and there's something you said stood out to me when you talked about making a systems impact, and I think it's something we talk about a lot as a team. The internship did seem more individual support, maybe a little bit community support, but what are ways that we can make an impact on the system? And I think you all have done this. Like, you provided a example for how to have a program that doesn't charge tuition and thinks about these different ways of supporting students of color. Another thing that we've also talked about wanting to do more of is supporting minority serving on quote unquote minority serving institutions, but HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions. What are ways that we can make sure they have support, since there's so many opportunities to make an impact with the communities of color that are at those universities? I wonder, Deja, for you specifically, thinking about the systems that we want to make an impact of, what are some of the lessons learned that you could share, either things that we've shared as DD in general, but for people still working in internships or in institutions wanting to attract and recruit and retain diverse students in their programming, what are some of the lessons learned that you've taken away from this experience of supporting the internship for 2 years?
Sure. I think of two things. I think one, we talk a lot about finances, and this being a model of a free internship, we see that there are even more layers to the financial barriers that come attached with trying to become a dietitian. So I think that was one lesson, that it's a little bit deeper than we even thought. And two, culture of the program and culture of the sites that they're going into, that even though that doesn't have anything to do with money, is one of the most important components to helping people feel supported and like they want to stay in the profession. Hopefully, programs out there are taking cultural humility and cultural background seriously and are trying to be more welcoming and understanding.
Those are great. Tamara, what about you? Lessons learned for those still in it, in the thick of it.
I definitely agree with what Deja said about culture. They look at their program and they take a look at ways that my students and interns feel like they're valued and that I see them as an asset to this profession. And then how can I support them and continue to build upon their unique lived experience that they're going to be bringing to our profession that we really need. And I hope that educators are willing to adjust from beginning to end, looking at the way they're recruiting, they're retaining, they're teaching their students, and how they're creating this for them in a way that is really matched to what the students need from their backgrounds. It's just going to help them build up their confidence in the area that we need them to build it up in, which is their lived experience and their culture. And they could take that into practice. Yeah, I think it's happening now because of necessity for some folks. I also hope that more dietitians consider going into academia. I always am thrilled when I see somebody's update on LinkedIn or something and saying they become a professor or a program director. Because I have said this before, and I will say it again. The profession looks the way that it does because of the people accepting people into programs. And there are people making decisions as to who gets to get into programs. And that goes as far as, where do you decide to recruit? Do you decide to put any efforts into recruiting in certain spaces that you may not be in normally? How are you supporting those students once they're actually accepted? Are you meeting them where they are, and those sorts of things? So I really love when I see, especially members of the DD community, becoming professors and program directors.
Yeah, we have a few resources. So if you work as part of an institution or internship program, we have some resources for educators. Please reach out to us if you'd like to get connected with that. Maybe it's something for your faculty or staff that are part of your programs. In closing, anything else you want to share? Can you plug where we'll get to see these new opportunities coming to the DD community?
Yes, we've got some exciting things coming up. We mentioned the scholarships that are going to be announced for students. Our scholarship program is reopening for people who are external to Diversify Dietetics Internship Program. I also would encourage people to keep an eye out. One thing about students is they become professionals, which we have learned over the years, and they still want support. We have a lot of professional development resources. We've also seen opportunities in the DD community as far as consulting roles. We are working on programming to funnel some of those opportunities to the Diversify Dietetics community. So we have a consulting program we're going to be opening up soon. Very specifically, you mentioned working with HBCUs. We have some programming that we're working with partners focused on historically Black colleges and universities and predominantly Black institutions as well. So even though exactly what we said. Even though this program is sunsetting, it's opening us up and our resources to be able to create other programming to help support the DD community. We have a lot of exciting announcements coming up in this first quarter. People will see in 2025 and beyond.
Deja, anything you want to plug?
No, I don't think so. Grateful for the opportunity to be a part of the internship. I think it was such a statement and it meant so much to the people that it impacted. And yeah, nothing else to say. Thank you.
I know I'm biased, but just to give y'all your flowers for how hard you worked on this program. It's been amazing to watch. And like you said, Deja, an inspiration to Tamara for you to see it come to life and watch you do that. And then Deja, for you to jump in, not having intended to be in that role, but take hold of it and really grow and become a leader and have this experience that now you're sharing with others. Thank you for that work. I hope you know how special it is and how much we appreciate you as the field, but like me specifically, it's been really awesome to see. So we will have all of those things linked as far as the new consulting opportunities and the scholarships that are coming up. Make sure you're subscribed to The Squeeze so you can find out more about those. Thanks for listening to Feed Me the Facts. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Deanna.
Thanks for listening to Feed Me the Facts. We'd love for you to join the conversation by sending in your thoughts, questions, and voice notes to FMTF for Feed Me the Facts at DiversifyDietetics.org. Your insights and experiences are invaluable to us, and we can't wait to include your voice in our discussion. This podcast was brought to you by Diversify Dietetics, a nonprofit community dedicated to increasing the racial and ethnic diversity in the field of nutrition and dietetics. You can find this and other episodes of Feed Me the Facts on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as on our website, www.diversifydietetics.org. Stay up to date on what's happening in the DD community by subscribing to our monthly newsletter, The Squeeze. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. You can follow the DD community online on Instagram and Facebook at Diversify Dietetics.